You ready?
Never turn the fan off. Hello and welcome to Zoom Live. And I know that maybe from have been some of you who have been wondering, will we be on? Well, there is always hope. So we're grateful that you have joined us on Zoom Live. You might have saw the previous flyer, and as you look on the screen now, you see a different version of the flyer as one of our guests, Sister Natalie, she's not able to join us. So we pray that she will be well and she'll be able to join us at another time. Today we have a really wonderful lineup. Just take us into a very interactive discussion as we will be focused on health and hope. We have Greg Williams, who is a pastor here in the South Bahamas Conference. He has graduated from university with a degree in biology and chemistry. And so you can see why I might stutter faster, because we're looking to go into some different things, and he will not be drawing the pastoral side, perhaps. He also graduated with his master's degree in occupational therapy from Howard University, and of course, later on, he attained his master's in divinity at the University, hence pastor. And he has worked both in Akakir Hospital and also Rehabilitation Hospital in Washington and in Bermuda. So I couldn't say so much about the great Craig Williams. And of course, you would have known Joseph, who he continues with us, who is an educational ministry strategist, a family leadership and discipleship, and evangelical extraordinaire, and of course, a consultant and a certified family life educator. We have with us Pastor Keen Adams, who is also coming from the background of chaplaincy. As presently, he is at the Valley Baptist Medical Care Center in Arlington, Texas, and he is doing a year in his chaplain residency. So all of these persons are coming with a different background that touches the health or the family. And today, as we discuss the matter of health, I know that they will delve deep into it, and we will have just a wonderful time as we have this active discussion on health and hope. I am Larry Green, your host, and we're just going to kick it off, and we're going to have a wonderful time in discussion. Gentlemen, welcome to Zoom Hope Live.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor.
Okay, what's things been going on in your life, in your different social distance space? I don't see much Afro anymore, perhaps only for Pastor Joseph.
Well, quite frankly, I'm blessed to have a personal barber. My wife has been a barber for the past few years, and so I'm blessed and highly shaped up. So I'm giving God thanks for that. And just practicing ministry. You ask, how things are going on. Well, before I go to ministry, personally, I like to be outside and interacting with people. I think making friends is just grand, and not having the opportunity to do that and sharing with my neighbors, just reaching out has been a challenge on a personal level. But I'm also taking the opportunity to reach out a little bit more to my family, to be with my son. And so it's, I'm really trying to balance it and see the good in it. It's not always easy to see the good, but I'm trying to see the good. But socially, it's challenging because I'm, maybe one of those social butterflies sometimes.
Pastor Williams.
Yes.
I notice you have some Moses on. You do not have a personal. One thing down for you down west.
Let me say this. I've been blessed. The Lord has blessed me to have the ability not to grow hair. I only need the barber hairs for the back. So I'm making camouflage. Today it looks like I had a haircut until I lean forward.
Oh, well.
Right, so I'm blessed.
So your personal barber.
Yes, the Holy Spirit provided the way.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be on the program today. I'm really enjoying being home with my family. My two daughters are here from university. My son's home. They're doing school at home. My son's doing school at home. My wife's doing courses at home, and it's just been an incredible time because it's forcing us to the communication factor in the family. It's forcing us to sit down within a small environment to dialogue, to share, and to do things that we usually do because we're so distracted or we are apart from each other.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So Dr. Joseph.
Yes, I am here trying to decide who will be my next barber.
Well, as you can see, if you want to keep with the apple, I know where to be, right here.
Yeah, I may have to get by you to, at least make a trek by you and see if I could get that done. But that having been said, these are days that requires us to really do some focus and some reflection. So as my colleague said, Pastor Craig, that it's just good to be home with the family. Also, the time I have, is some time, outreach and in reach. I would say, because I have an opportunity to try and reach out to people who are going through some times of anxiety. So I'm able to help as much as I can. There also, I have opportunity to write quite a bit of manuscripts because I have plans when this is over to publish. Right. So that is going pretty good. And of course, the whole matter of continuing in the area of personal competence is getting involved in webinars, and it's been quite a time. I mean, it's a good thing God has given us the ability to develop habits, right?
Yeah.
And although they say it takes 3 weeks to form a new habit and then another 3 weeks to make it second nature, I think most of us now are beginning to form new habits. Even as my other colleague said, he's a social butterfly, but you just got to form new habits right now. So
it's a new normal, Pastor.
Yeah,
and
it
I
is.
think the ability to adapt is what really makes us human. And unless you can adapt, then you'll really find yourself in some serious challenges.
Indeed.
And so God has been, just teaching me again to reach out in other ways. And I'm learning, I'm growing. You talk about that personal development and just seeing, having even a little bit more time with my own thoughts.
Yeah.
has helped to really help me to figure out and understand me a little bit more and why I do some things. So, you know, as I said, I'm looking for the good in it, and God has been showing me the good in it. And I'm going through this new normal, as I said this morning.
Indeed.
It's a learning process.
Indeed.
So it's good, it's good. So it's hot in Texas or cold?
It is pretty warm here.
Okay. All right.
High
So,
80s.
So let's get to the meat. Let's get to the meat of the matter.
Yeah.
So for those who are watching on Facebook, remember you can send in your questions. I look down on my phone and I'll try to share your questions or comments. So we're talking about health and hope, and the question right away in my mind is how important, you know, what are the benefits or physical health has on our hope for today, perhaps even tomorrow or eternity? Because hope, I believe, is seen in those different segments. Hope for today, hope for tomorrow, the realities that we have to face, and of course, hope for eternity. How is that important? Our health, how does it correlate with hope?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Pastor Williams first, the occupational therapist, see what he's saying.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I would start off by saying that within the scope of a whole man, we have to address the mind, body, and soul. I know, Green, you have mentioned the physical part, right? There has to be a balance between the three. And for most of us, we are stronger or we are more whole in one area than the other. Okay, so as we find ourselves secluded within our homes with our family, those are the three areas that everybody needs to address. Okay, specifically for me, physically, everybody has to address the physical. And
yes.
In that regard, I think Pastor Green, you isolated the physical part first. You want to deal with that first?
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The precedent would be from the spiritual element. The Bible calls for a union when it comes to in health regard to mind, body, and soul. That's how God functions and operates with man. From the physical side of it, I think for me, I find it to be easier to address within the home, right? And find space, probably because of my discipline. I have a clear and keen idea how to address the various different muscle groups of the body, right? To sustain its sufficiency while we are in a closed environment at home, right? So in regards to exercise, where a lot of people love to go running, because when you run, for example, in nature, you're not just addressing the physical, but you're also addressing the mental, assuming that in the Bahamas, we can run on the beach, we can run in nature, right? But within the home environment, and some people may only live in an apartment, not a house. They have limited area in the house. While there's isometric and isotonic exercises that could be done, I guess health specialists would say that a functioning person who goes work from 9 to 5 or who's active, they would need at least 30 minutes of cardiovascular aerobic type of activity. But we are mobile in the house, right?
Yes.
Like most are. Then you need a whole lot more than 30 minutes of exercise.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, I'm going to want us to go there. So I'm not going to let you spill out everything right now.
No problem.
Yeah, but I like where you're going, because I want us to find out how do we balance that later within the different age groups. But I am getting from you that you're saying that we cannot isolate our health from our hope. Yes, okay.
If any of those areas, and I know Pastor Joseph can attest to it, if any of those areas are if there's a deficiency in any one of those areas, right, then certain coping mechanisms become challenged, at least psychologically and physically, right? From the loss of energy, from a physical point of view. In other words, if you live in a low townhouse and you're not exercising, you got to go up and down steps, then you're gonna be fighting to breathe, right? Which is so. At the end of the day, you're going to spend more time in a sediment type of, like in bed or sitting up in a chair, because you don't want to get up to exert any energy because of how it makes you feel. And then that will affect the psychological, right? And so I'm sure we can go into that area too, because we see like places like England where there's no sunshine, pretty much it's raining a good percentage of the year. These people often suffer depression, and some people even suicidal because of there's no sun. There's not enough sun.
That came to mind just now, even as Pastor Adam, this morning you were talking about that, about this escalation in suicidal cases. How does that correlate with health and hope?
I mean, quite frankly, they say sitting is the new smoking. Becoming couch potatoes and just not doing much, not having much physical activities. We are made to move, our bodies are made to move. And while I have not done any major studies in that area, like Pastor Williams, I can speak from my personal experience, and having been even in Michigan, where we've had very little sun for a major part of the year. And I can remember how that affected me, and going through my first episode of just mild depression, because I wasn't able to go out. We used to play football in the mornings, Sunday mornings at gym, or even bike to school, because I lived maybe 4 or 5 minutes from campus. And when I wasn't able to do that during the winter, it really compounded the situation. And it was about March, going into April, after not having the opportunity to get much physical exercise, that started affecting me mentally, and my ability to focus and study, because exercise does help to release happy, endorphins that they call happy, that helps us to be happy rather. And so if you're not having that going on for you, then you're going to be short-circuiting yourself mentally. And I worked on at a call center while I was in Michigan as well, and I know that the calls for individuals who are depressed came in during the months when we never had lots of sun. And so just not being able to go outside and exercise really does affect us mentally. And quite frankly, if you start using antidepressants, which at least 40 million people here in the US are on, antidepressants, it really starts that spiral that if you don't mind, you might not get yourself off it to be able to do well again. And so we can't underestimate the correlation between just having physical exercise and us functioning well mentally.
Yeah, Pastor Green. It's interesting that as I listen to both of my colleagues, that they did some good focus on exercise, and also the sun. Right. It's really informative for our audience to again receive and understand and know that the sun has healing properties, right? Of course, I think we get vitamin D from the sun, and then exercise. I mean, it's amazing what was said by both in terms of cardiovascular health and of course emotional health. So the coming together of the entire being, and this is why scripture constantly from the beginning talks about the unity of man, right? Each domain affects the other domain, so we have to work on developing all domains. At this time, of course, we are focusing on the physical, which is really important, right? And the matter of having hope. If your body is not doing well, it drags on your mind, right? And it affects the way you think. It affects your hopeful attitude, right? So it's very important that our audience look at what we are saying a second time, the importance of exercise at this juncture, and the importance of sunlight, even in your own confines. If you're confined to your home or your yard, that's enough space to exercise. I watch sometimes shows on the TV that has to do with persons who are in prison, and they don't have much space in that cell, and man, they're doing all kinds of exercise in there to try and keep themselves alive, right? So this matter of exercise is very important.
Yeah.
Pastor Green, there's a chemical in your body that is called endorphins. Endorphins are usually very low in the morning, and the best way to replenish your endorphins is exercise. It's an immediate mood change, and so in our society today, there are many individuals who suffer from depression. Matter of fact, I sent you an inventory, right, on stress as a result of anxiety and stress, as depression from stress and anxiety from stress. These are inventories, Pastor Green, that you could put out on this line where people can do a checklist, and then it will let each individual know where they stand in regards to that area, because
please resend it. I didn't get the full inventory.
You probably send it to your WhatsApp.
Yeah, I saw it, but just please resend it. It did not come.
Okay, in the WhatsApp?
Yes, it didn't come in the WhatsApp.
Okay, okay.
Just do it. You could do it afterwards. Yes.
Okay. So in regards to endorphin, we have everybody. We all have our personalities are different, right? And some of us are more high strung. God has made us all of us different, right? But as we get older, we often lose our chemical balance. Balance often goes in the negative. And so women in the change of life, I mean, you'd be very surprised how negatively social distancing and staying in houses is impacting relationships, right? And to be personally speaking, exercise is fundamental, okay, when it comes to mood and the absorption of stress in your life, which is health. And as we know, health is wealth. So running on the spot, doing aerobic online videos, doing family aerobics, it's essential in regards to what we're going through, far beyond the physical element of sustaining ourselves.
Yeah.
And
I like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Pastor Williams, just saying, as a family, you talk about family aerobics, and that's something that we've really looked into, and my son, enjoys trying to outdo us. But even the baby at 16 months, he's bouncing. He's trying to emulate us because he sees mommy, daddy, and brother having fun. And so I think a healthy lifestyle also, if we can support each other, because while my wife is trying to exercise and I'm trying to do it on my own, we come together then we support each other, because people go to gym and they have memberships and they have personal trainers because they want to be motivated.
Yeah.
But going the route of having family aerobics is really encouraging and can really, you know, bring the family together, because after all, children are at great risk, you know, at becoming obese. I mean, they've gone up, what, 30%? The rate of obesity has increased here in the state. And so, you know, according to, let me get the, I just wanted to reference where I got the stats from, so that, you know, I'm not just talking off the top of my head. Mentalhealth.net. It's taking stats from the CDC here, because children are really at risk of type 2 diabetes, which can be, you know, prevented. We're just really coming down with it. And so sometimes we think, hey, it's only adults, only people who are aging, you know, going through andropause, menopause, getting up in age. But no, we need, especially children now who are more so on their tablets, exercising only their fingers and their necks. They really need to get physical exercise, because I, being on the ward, on the floor here at a hospital, I've spoken to several, you know, workers, and one of the consensus, I think 2 weeks ago, was that, hey, my child, your child, at least 3 or 4 of them in their children who are all under 16 were on medication. We really, you know, are trying to relate to our children from their moods to different stuff, and the medications just to boost the moods, to get them to do stuff. And I think one of the reasons for this is because the physical activity is low. So just wanting to say, as family members, we can really help each other out by doing that family aerobics, and it does give a brighter outlook for your day.
Yes, and I think it's particularly important, and I appreciate what I'm getting, because you're thinking about going into 2 months, some over 2 months, been isolated, locked in homes, haven't gone anywhere. This, you know, if one is not intentional in having exercise or other health activities intentionally, what can happen is some serious thing that happen after the virus has gone. We'll see people coming out of their homes, entering back into society with all different kinds of sickness and different conditions, and even looking different. So it's very important. It's very important what I'm getting from you right now. And I believe that it is very beneficial as well.
And I mean, being in the clinical setting, you know, we realize that the therapists have not stopped coming. You just did an operation or something, and you're even taken off the ventilator because you had to be intubated, and the physical therapist is there, you know, daily to try and help you to walk. To the occupational therapist, they're there to help you to get back into moving up and down. You can walk 1, 2, 3, up to 10 meters or so, because even while you're lying down and your chest, your lungs are not, you know, working by themselves and expanding, contracting, and the machine is breathing for you, you realize that you do have serious problems. So just being in the hospital, you still have therapists that help you to get up and going. And that just points to the fact that, you know, while you're in the hospital, you still need to be doing exercises. And while you're there too, you want to be able to read the word and becoming aware of what God would want you to do, mentally exercising your mind, because that's when the enemy is going to come with doubts, with different things to try and discourage you. And if your mind is not being exercised too, as you maybe move on to the spiritual aspect of it, then the foundation lays dormant, and the enemy has more room to tempt and to prolong depression, and to have all different suicidal thoughts also just creeping in and taking precedence.
Yes. One of the things that strikes me is that the first response to COVID-19 for someone who contracted the sickness, disease, is that individual should be socially isolated, most commonly in the home, right? So right now, there will be persons who might be listening who have the COVID-19. And then there will be persons who might listen later on who does have it. So what are some of the habits that one can have within that confinement? Because perhaps that person is in a home where there are other family members that they don't want them to get it, so they don't want to go outside or get. So perhaps maybe it's in a room, in a basement. What can that person do more than just praying through the old process that everything goes well? What are some of the things that can be done? I know that next week we will have someone who has gone through it or going through it, who will be on the show. But what do you offer?
Yeah, I would just make something that would be proactive instead of reactive, right?
Yes.
At this time, we have to do all we can to make sure that our immune system is not compromised, right? We need to be strong physically, strong mentally, strong spiritually, right? The importance of the immune system being strong, right? Cannot be taken for granted, because should one be quarantined because of the virus, right? That is going to play an important role, right? The strength of mind, right? The strength of body, right? The strength of your spiritual life. These are all going to come together, right, for a battle for your life. So it's very important that our audience understand that whatever we can do now, do the best we can to keep our immune system in tip-top shape.
Yes.
I agree 100% with Pastor Joseph in regards to the immune system. We know a functional, high-performing immune system can make the difference of death and survival. There's some research out there right now, because we associate this virus with its attack on the lungs, but they've been in recently in a number of autopsies, they're discovering that it is attacking vessels and organs. It is like a inflammatory process. Okay, so the inflammation is just not occurring in the lungs; it is occurring in the vessels of the body and the vessels that surround the heart muscles. So with inflammation, you get restriction and decreased circulation. So back to what Pastor Green was saying in regards to how do we address somebody who is on isolation. The question is, are they in isolation awaiting a result? Are they in isolation fighting the virus? And then if they are fighting the virus, to what degree of fight? Like, what is the prognosis in regards to its impact on one's body? Is it like, okay, you know what? I'm running the temperature for 7 days and it's not breaking, right? Or is it just severe body pains, right? Because what happens with severe body pains and temperatures, people want to you want to stay in bed, when that's the wrong thing to do, right? That's not the right. So if you're eating and you're holding your food down, right? So you don't have no issue with dehydration, and your electrolytes are fine, then to some degree it's beneficial to keep moving, right? We talk about doing activities with your hands above your head, right? Because or specific activities that impact the circulation of what's going on in your lungs. Okay, so motivation. Pastor Joseph mentioned the psyche, the power of positive thinking, motivating you, pushing yourself, and be active, right? Now, if the doctor says, you know what, your situation is so bad, you need to not be so active, right? But the more active you are, the better outcomes are saying, or recovery, the process to recovery is better, right? So you got to fight against that spirit of saying, you know what, I just want to lay down, I just want relief. Pastor Joseph, your brother-in-law speaks who had the virus, and he shared it.
Yeah, he's gonna be here next week, I think. Yeah.
Right. He spoke to the pain, the joint pain, the body pain. When you breathe, it's like a Big Mac truck has hit you. It is just so severe that it's a fight against movement, right? We know that movement is everything. So, Pastor Green, one of the reasons why the exercise, sustained exercise, is important if you have the virus or if you don't have the virus, right? Because those of us who suffer from high blood pressure, we know that in order to control blood pressure, it's a combination of diet and exercise. So what happens is that people who are considered to be those who are diagnosed with high blood pressure and their blood pressure is kept in check, you know, like say below 135, 127 over 75, right? You would think, you know what, I'm straight because I'm maintaining my blood pressure, right? But what happens is that when you get this virus and the inflammation process happens, everything starts overworking. The heart starts overworking because it's a fight to breathe, right? And then when you alleviate the exercise, because you know what, it's just so got me stressed out, then the blood pressure goes through the roof, and so people get clots, people have heart attacks and strokes because you can't control your blood pressure. And that's why those pre-existing conditions such as blood pressure and diabetes, when they go out of whack, then you know your kidneys can start acting up and things go haywire.
Wow.
Yeah, so prevention is, you know, just agreeing with Pastor Williams and Dr. Joseph. Prevention is always better than cure.
Yes.
It would really do us well if we, you know, as a church, we do practice, we encourage, we have a teaching. I'm here in a Baptist setting, and people sometimes know us as Adventists for the health laws more than anything else. And it's really something a gentleman said to me a few weeks ago. I mean, what do you do? What do you do to be energetic like that? I'm surrounded with people who need 3, sometimes more cups of coffee to get them through the day. And I was trying to say, you know, I try to do it naturally with fruits and exercise, and it seemed a little strange to some people. And one gentleman in particular, who's, you know, asked me to just help him. We have the opportunity to practice the 8 laws of health that we teach as a church. It's not something that, you know, membership is required to do in order to be a member. For those who are watching, but we really have these teachings, you know, that we encourage persons to practice. And if we do, it really helps in the preventative way. Just having good nutrition, and good nutrition means, you know, that balance of healthy stuff. what's good, peas, beans, legumes, that sort of stuff. And a lot of individuals now, including my wife, we're developing some amount of resistance to the wheat that we have. You know, if you can go things that are non-GMO, go that route, because the chemicals are really messing us up. You know, so nutrition, we've spoken a lot about exercise and water is so important. We're talking about using water now to wash our hands and to get clean. If we do also flush our systems, I mean, 75% of our body is pretty much water. And so if we are using a lot of water inside to flush our system, that helps. And it does give us a good way of staying on the preventative side. I know there are others, it's New Start, and the other speakers can speak to them. But
Yes,
just
yes.
to say, nutrition, exercise, and
You
water
talk about that.
really does help to boost our system.
Pastor Green,
Yes.
we, as Christians and our faith and our belief system, right? Many times in Christendom, the belief is, you know, take it to the Lord in prayer and leave it at the cross, and it will work out, right?
Well,
The question is, what do we do, right? When we get up off our knees in prayer, right? Oftentimes we try to spiritualize our way through hardship and difficulty. And I think where the mental thing comes in, because oftentimes we try to avoid or ignore the realities that are before us by spiritualizing, saying, well, you know what? The Lord will see us through, okay? Yeah. There are a number of, you may have read a number of not articles, but news briefs in the United States. And even you see the same mentality in our church where people immediately ignored the recommendations. And the pastor is preaching about front, you know what, the Lord will see us through. And in a number of places, the pastor has perished from this virus, right? And left his congregants, right, pastorless, right? I read 2 articles about that, right?
Yep.
Even in the church here, we feel, what? Church and state, the government is forcing us to close down. They're trying to control our worship. But from a medical or a medical personnel, I could say that we have to be very careful, okay, on how we spiritualize things, right? And so if you think you could just pray and lay in bed and not exercise, you got another thing coming your way.
Yeah,
it might
very
sound
good
funny.
point. Very good point, right? This matter of having the domains of our lives separated has been, to me, such a dangerous thing over the years. And it's so hypocritical as well, to our detriment. For instance, we go to the temple or to the sanctuary or to the church building, and we carry a certain kind of holy attitude, and then we leave the building and we live another kind of life. So we've been having this kind of separation of the sacred and the secular. The whoever came up with that. So there's a certain holiness and reverence that we exhibit in certain buildings and in certain places, and then in other places we can just let loose and do what we want, and the Lord will help us. It's this I think this has hurt us quite a bit, right? So we have to understand that, as Pastor Craig was speaking, it came to me that prayer and action go together.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Prayer and action go together. There is no dichotomy. There is no separation between prayer and action, right?
Yes.
The one who does nothing but pray will soon cease to pray, right? That's what Ellen White says in Steps to Christ. The one who does nothing but pray will soon cease to pray, right? So you have to combine prayer and look at this word I'm going to use, this adjective. We have to combine prayer with energetic activities, right?
Yes.
Like Hezekiah, he prayed, but there's some things he applied. There's some natural remedies that he applied.
Yes.
So we have to combine prayer with energetic activities. And I have that chapter in my book, Possibility Praying, right? Where you combine prayer with energetic activities. So you don't go with the idea that, I could spiritualize this whole thing and God is going to get me through. Okay, I'm going to go on the pinnacle of this temple. I'm going to throw myself off and the angel's going to save me, right?
Well,
This is presumption.
Yes. Yes.
so it might sound funny, but I heard a preacher say some time ago that, some of us as Christians, and if you're watching and you're not a Christian, then, we really encourage you to come to know Jesus. But for those of us who are Christians, some of us, our faith is obese. Like literally, we need to exercise our faith. So we talk about God and his goodness, but at the same time, we don't exercise that. And I see that it came home, to me last week, or was it week before, that my son, at 5 said, "Daddy, I'm praying to God to stop the virus, and why doesn't he?" And in that moment, the Lord just, helped me to respond to him by saying, when we pray, there are times when we ourselves can also help to answer our prayers. And so you pray to be protected, and then you do what is humanly possible, because heaven won't do for us what we can, do humanly, which is presumptuous. You've mentioned that earlier. And so we have to look at where we need to play our part as humans, because God works both with us, and he wants our willingness, and he will help us to accomplish that. So the protection that we need from this virus could very well lie into our doing what is humanly possible, so that God can enact that protection.
Earlier, Pastor Adams, and of course, I believe everyone touches a portion of it in terms of the 8 natural laws of life. I've heard comments on nutrition and exercise. I've heard about water. Of course, we have sunlight. I've heard about sunlight. I haven't heard much about water. Temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. Can we zoom in on these other ones that we haven't heard anything on, like water, temperance, fresh air, rest, and trust in God? And as we zoom into that, listen this, beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospered. Is this making any sense now? Because this is from God, right? This is the word of God. We're talking about all kinds of sickness before COVID-19, but no, look at it. The entire world has literally shut down because of sickness. Is this still a promise from God?
For sure. I mean, God's word will stand forever. The issue is never with God. The issue is with us, right? We need to self-examine, and we need to reflect. And this gives us an opportunity to do some deep reflection as to how we have been behaving in the world. In Genesis chapter 1, God said, "Let us make man in our own image." It's in the image of God made he, male and female created he them. And then God gave them power to rule. There's some interesting points from the very beginning. One, and all the points have to do with relationship, right? All the 3 points, they have to do with relationship. One, we have a relationship with God. What kind of relationship with God we have? We have a worship relationship with God. That is important. That's a worship relationship with God. We worship God. We honor God. We obey God, right? Number 2, it talks about we were made in God's image, male and female, right? So we have a relationship, a human relationship that occupies how do you put it? A relationship between human beings, right? So there is interpersonal relationship, and that relationship, right? That relationship is all about fellowship. This is why social distancing or physical distancing is really a trying situation, because we were made for relationship. We're made to come together physically, socially. We're made to come together. So so that fellowship in the church, we call that koinonia, the fellowship. That's why people miss the fellowship in the church.
Potlucks, amen.
And then rule over. It says, and you shall have dominion over the cattle and over whatever. So they're asked to rule. What kind of relationship is that? That's stewardship, right? That's stewardship. So notice here that we have these relationships that are very important. And these relationships with God, with one another, with the environment, right? That's there from the beginning. And God told us what to do. Now, we need to self-reflect and see, what have we been doing to God lately, recently, in this world? What have we been doing to one another, right? Have we been causing moral trouble on one another, like going to labs and fool around with germs and germs getting away? Or have we been eating stuff that we should not eat, right? And then cause germs to come over to our species? What have we doing? What have we been doing to the environment that God asked us to take care of and use it so that everybody could be benefit, while at the same time the environment stays pristine and healthy? It's time for reflection on what we've been doing, because God has been faithful.
Yes. So you're saying that we cannot turn the blame on God to say, well, you're speaking about health and look at what we're in. You're saying that God said, I wish this for you. I can give you this, but these are the things that you need to do with your health, so that the hope that I give you can be a reality.
Precisely.
And
Pastor Green, God has given us, right, laws to govern ourselves. Okay, when we deviate from God's laws, it's havoc. Okay, and that's what we are seeing. They are still refusing to say that, and I don't believe it's that this virus was man-made. That it was made in a lab. That idea is not being embraced. Let's say, you know what? This virus was already there, and it may have gotten out into a meat market or what have you, right? When you consider, or like Ebola, they believe that Ebola came from the forest somewhere, and that every so many a quarter of a century, there's the because of our abuse of nature, new diseases will come out of nowhere. Okay, the timing of it, we are on a destructive rampage when it comes to our environment.
Yes, sir.
And Pastor Green, you mentioned about you talking about the laws, and you mentioned about
temperance, air,
water.
That's it. Stay right there. Temperance. Okay. Yeah. Now, I know Pastor Joseph will agree with me, hopefully, right? You are not going to heaven if you don't practice temperance. I don't care how spiritual you are. If you're not a temperate person, you're not going to make it into God's kingdom some way. Temperance is the cornerstone of spirituality, right? A temperate lifestyle. Now, I'm going to say something, and this is what I was taught at Andrews, but every time I mention it, it makes people shake sometimes, right? Okay. There's a term that is used called the spiritual disciplines. Well, now, people think that it may be secular in regards to description, but there are biblical applications to it that are quite sound, right?
They call it temperance. Yeah. I was saying they call it spiritual development on our side now.
Okay, let's keep it there, right? Yeah. Keep it right near to get a minute, Pastor Green, right? So, if you look at the Bible, there are 20, 30, 40, 50 different areas of practice in regards to, and these practices don't bring you nearer to God, but it provides an environment, yes. Okay, yeah. And to have insight. For example, right? And this is good for what we're going through right now, right? Isolation is a discipline. Excuse me, what's the term again, Pastor Joseph? Isolation. Discipline.
What's the term? Development.
Spiritual development, okay? Isolation is one of them, okay? Worship is another one. The praise and adoration is another one. And everything has to be functioned within and we can't go too extreme or either way in its application, right? While we are home, it will do us good to practice isolation. And when you practice isolation, it involves getting away from the hustle and bustle of life, getting away from the demands of children and family, and get away in silence and allow the Lord to speak into you through His Spirit, right? It be through a text, the secular world says empty your mind, but Christians practice isolation through putting in your mind Bible texts that allow God to speak to you. And I'm talking about, and I'm still on the physical, and this is emotional, right? There are things that we could do to practice. If you, I got to be very careful because there's a number of New Age Christians out there who push this in the congregation. But Jesus, when He went into the wilderness, isolation. Okay, we find it all throughout the Bible. I feel that if we are properly led by a pastor or somebody who really knows what they're doing, okay, it helps us relevance in our ability to deal with stress, to deal with depression, to deal with anxiety. Like, for example, I used to suffer from anxiety, okay, and I got paranoid from working with so many stroke patients in the hospital, so many sick, and we're seeing this right now. Matter of fact, there's on the news last week, it talked about a female physician who committed suicide. Yep. She just couldn't, and she was an emergency physician, right? So yes. I know what she went through, right? Because I started feeling like I'm sick. I was seeing so many stroke patients every day that I felt like, you know what, I'm going to have a stroke. And so the minute the doctor diagnosed me with high blood pressure, all the matter, I said, you know what? I started going crazy in the hospital. That's one of the reasons why I left the environment, because I had to escape being there with so many sick people, right? Pastoral ministry and when I went to the seminar allowed me to practice these different areas, right, that have a purpose. For example, I don't want to go running, in this class, in this worship class, this personal work, this class, I had an opportunity to go to a facility. It was like a farm in the middle of Michigan. And you go onto this facility, and the minute you hit the facility, Pastor Joseph, it's isolation. So it was silence and isolation. So we at the dinner table, nobody speaks. There were lakes on the property, and it's away from the highway, and silence is the therapy. I mean, I'm sitting around the table with 8 people, and you couldn't even hear people breathe. People are just silent, right? And at the end of 4 days, I had never felt, you know, I've ran a half a marathon before, and it was an incredible feeling when you get through it and what your body goes through, so relaxed. But after 4 or 5 days of isolation, no talking, no TV, no phone, no nothing, I felt rejuvenated. And what I'm saying to our listening audience, right, there are different techniques. Maybe you're having an anxiety attack, you practice deep breathing, and, you know, and slow your, right there. There are many things that you could do to get through this present crisis emotionally, physically, and spiritually too.
Yes, and I think I'm getting from you as you're zooming onto isolation so much. You're talking about rest, streaming from temperance into rest. And sometimes we resting, it does not only include ceasing from physical activities, but it can very well mean that you just need to unload your mind. You know, get outside, look up in nature, look in the sky, and, you know, just have that moment, that time with God and with yourself.
Right. You see, Pastor Williams, I know what he's talking about regarding the you know, the whole spiritual development, because I remember heading to that class. We didn't spend more than 1 day, but it was such a challenge for us, and I'm saying us, to not be interacting with each other. And Sister White, for those who know Ellen G. White, a very prolific female writer, author, Bible commentator, godly Christian woman, she said that, you know, when all of the voices are hushed, the silence of the soul makes more distinct the voice of God. And one of the reasons we don't find ourselves being rejuvenated, even on Sabbaths, Adventist, hello somebody, is because we are running around,
Yes.
and we're substituting busyness for holiness.
Yes.
Let me
Let
me chime in. Let me just chime in. Let me chime in here, because I think these two men are on to something very important right here. The curse of the human race, to me, is imbalance. Right? When you look at the rhythm of the week, God says work 6 days, rest on the 7th. It was an important point God was making, not just for worship, but for the healing of the human being. Right?
That's right.
When you look at the life of Christ, the life of Christ had a rhythm, right? He would go into isolation with his Father, then he would go to the public, then he would come from the public, go back into isolation, then he would leave isolation and go back into the public, right? This is the kind of rhythm of life that I think as we get into the new normal, we're gonna have to take seriously, right? We don't have to impose all our activity on the rest. It's for rest.
That's right. And so, Pastor, you mentioned, Pastor Green, you asked about you know, the ideal that God outlines there, you know, speaking through John to Gaius, that I wish above all things that he may prosper and be in good health. That's God's ideal. Many of the individuals who want God's blessings don't put themselves in a position to be faithful to receive that blessing. And so God says, hey, I'm going to give you this, but we have a role to play, we have a part to play. And so since the laws have been broken, right, natural laws that we can't get rid of, you jump from 6 feet, you're not going to go up, you're going to go down. That's a natural law. And so if we eat any old thing, our body is going to respond respond in the same way. So while we want God to bless us and for 3 John 1 to be a reality in our lives, we need to recognize, we need to ensure that we're doing what God would require of us to ensure that his words can become life in us. There's a unity of the divine and of the human element in order to bring across what God wants. And so as the world comes to a close, we will see pestilence, we'll see natural disasters, we see these things happening, and people will want to blame God for it. But the reality is God knew it would have happened because we have violated the laws of the land, the natural laws, physical laws. And so we are pretty much reaping the rewards, and God will, before we self-destruct, deliver us. And that's where hope comes in for me. And I'd want to share with somebody that even though you might not be rid of your diseases now, even though we might not come clean and have everything going away, there is coming a time when it will be restored. And so a friend of mine, I saw he lost his father due to this COVID-19. It's really challenging, but there is something somewhere, not a mere pie in the sky, but a restoration of God's ideal for us. And I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Pastor Green.
Out of time.
Oh.
If you could just use as your final comment to each one of us, just speak to the whole idea of health and hope, and of course to the family, young people, children, that person alone. What can you do? What can you do to actually lift your health physically and holding on to that hope that Christ has given us?
I'm gonna let Pastor Joseph go first. I can think a little more.
Okay, that is very, very good. I didn't get a chance to talk about food and the breakdown of the body and how important food is as medicine to rebuild the body. I didn't get to say much about that. However, the where we are now, hope is critical. As a matter of fact, from the very beginning of Scripture, right, God has given us hope. It's critical. O.S. Martin said, hope is the medicine. He says, there is no medicine like hope. No tonic so powerful as expectation of something tomorrow, right? So medicine is hope itself. And I want people that I'm talking to now, as you practice what we've been sharing with you, the matter of exercise and eating and resting and temperance and sunshine and the others, right? That your hope be in God. Your hope. Put your hope in God. There comes a time when everything on earth that has somehow helped us and we have somehow put our trust in actually leave us. God will never leave us nor forsake us. And when we put our hope in God, right, God has an intention that whatever we lose for his sake, he will give us even more in the future. And God's future may not necessarily mean tomorrow or next month. God's future has to do with bringing the world to a meaningful ending with the second coming of Christ, the resurrection, the restoration of perfect health. That's the kind of hope I want to leave the audience with.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.
My recommendation, Pat Green, you asked us to speak to the 3 or 4 different age groups: children, youth, middle age, old people, in regards to what we're going through right now. I would recommend that each person will sit down with a piece of paper and pencil, okay, and structure out their day. I would encourage families to be unified in their functioning, in their daily activity. I would recommend that 6 o'clock in the morning, okay, everybody gets up, they have their worship. Pastor Joseph said it takes 30 days or so to get into new habits. Being that we're in a close environment, it'd be necessary to establish collective habits, okay? So we won't be a temptation to each other. So if everybody gets up at 6, have their personal devotions, okay? At 6:30 comes around, everybody starts exercising together, do group exercising, everybody eat their breakfast at the same time. I think if we function within a cycle, okay, every evening before you go to bed, you have family worship. You can have individual worship in the morning, family worship in the evening, where you get to share your day, okay, which will absorb some of the stresses as you speak. It's like a small group, so to speak. You get to share and to release, so to speak, right? I recommend that you practice different things. For example, when Ellen James White, okay, because we're looking at the right, suffered from depression, okay, and it appeared that it may have been a chemical depression, right? Ellen G. White, they decided to move from Massachusetts to California, and one of the reasons why, because there was sunlight in California, and he would be able to better manage his mood. And what I'm saying today, and if we practice different things, Pastor Joe, like fasting, isolation, different things, it will help to, you got to try different things and see what works. Some of us, the average person takes an hour and a half, okay, to 2 hours to fall asleep in the night. Now it takes me 10 minutes, right? Yes. It drives my wife crazy, right? But when we bombard ourselves with all the information that we are exposing ourselves through the TV, to the media, through life, it's an imbalance. So I would say, Pastor Green, in regards to what you're in closing, that the family should sit down and map out as much as they can a unified front in regards to tackling and maintaining the challenges. Now, you got to have your own private time, personal time, but for the basic things, eat breakfast together at the table, eat lunch together at the table, eat dinner together at the table, have breakout sections, make sessions through the day, exercise sections. You don't need no weights. Just go get a pillowcase and put some canned gourds in there, and get 2 pillowcases and practice bicep curls. Tell your daughter to sit on your back and you just stretch out like you're about to go into a push-up. But don't go down. Just that isometric exercises where you don't move, but you go against resistance. It's so many things you could do in regards to maintaining collectively with the family and being unified in living. And that's what I would say, Pastor Green.
And I guess for me, I really want to just piggyback on Pastor Williams's idea of mapping out stuff by pointing to a S word that we really don't like: scheduling. Mm-hmm. It's really a bad word for a lot of us. But the truth is, if we realize it, if God didn't have a schedule in place, we wouldn't be able to have clocks. God has a schedule in place, a natural schedule that's in place, and we try to fit ourselves in it by putting a 24-hour or 23 3/4 hour day in it, and a 7-day cycle. Sorry, a 7-day week cycle, etc. If we get into the habit of having a schedule, it really helps. And this goes for 5-year-olds to to 50-year-olds, because our son at 5, he doesn't understand a full schedule, but he has the number there, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and he knows what happens every hour. And my wife has been intentional at doing this for the last few weeks, just so that being inside, he has something to look to, and he knows what comes next. So scheduling works. Another thing, just 3 things. Another thing is having a gratitude journal. You have a little bit more time on your hands. Work at a list of 1,000. Work towards a list of 1,000. See how quick you can reach to 1,000 things to be thankful for. And you'd be amazed at what you still have in spite of that which you have lost. And we've all lost a lot of things in this season, but see if you can find 1,000 things and how quick you could read. And lastly, while you do that, look for the possibilities, look for the positives, look for the positives. For me, I started doing more Spanish. I mean, I started doing things that I wouldn't normally do, to pass the time, things that are wholesome and healthy. And so let us see this not as a death sentence. This too will pass, friends. It will pass. And when you come out, when we come out of it, we will come out either better or worse. And we have the key, we have the authority to decide how we come out of this. And at worst case scenario, somebody doesn't make it out alive, there is a day when COVID and everything else that's bad will go, and we'll usher in the New Jerusalem. I look forward to that day.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you have heard it from these dynamic men, Pastor Craig Williams, the occupational therapist, Dr. Peter Joseph, the family life educator, family life leadership and discipleship and evangelism consultant, and of course, our friend Pastor Keen Adams, who is a chaplain. They have laid it out there. They have laid it out there. Your health matters to God. Make sure it matters to you. Take care of it. It was said that your health is your wealth. Nutrition, eat right. Get right amount of exercise. Drink plenty of water. Sunlight, get it when you can. Temperance, live a balanced life. Make sure you get fresh air. Rest. Don't overwork. Don't overdo it. Don't just stay in the TV, in the iPads, but rest. And of course, all of these things, we must trust God. Trust God. His words are still true. Beloved, I wish above all things that you will prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospered. This is God's word. 3 John 2, verse 1. Hope is still alive, and you have been tuning in Zoom Hope Live. As you go into this week, go with hope and grow in hope. Have a blessed and wonderful week. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Larry Green.